proposed, the school department proposed a number of new positions, I think about 22. This would fund some of those positions, plus would enable 3 new ELL teachers. So that gives you an overview on those large departments. I wanted to let you know, and you Mr. Chairman, had forwarded a question, and I will get to those questions, but I wanted to let you know that, reiterate that we are definitely to have a short-term plan and a long-term plan to reduce healthcare costs. The major part of that is all of the work that's been done with our consultant to design plan design changes, which will save considerable money if implemented across the workforce. The city, the Board of Aldermen, took the first step in that direction by passing the ordinance last week, which changed the plan design for the unaffiliated workers. And I won't go through all that detail again, but it will actually save people money on their paycheck because the working rates will go down, and it will also encourage people to go into the high deductible plan, which is really a very favorable way for employees to go. The 2 changes were, as you know, I'm sure everybody remembers, but an increase in the deductible for hospital visits. Back to the temporary aid expenditures. Following the recommendations of the school department, again, I'm going to cover just some of the major items. There's $700,000 to replace all the Chromebooks. There's $415,000 for startup expenses of a pre-K, of moving the pre-K program into the Christian school building on Franklin Street. Making that move would also create the possibility that the building could later house the Brentwood facility, for which we pay rent. So school department strongly supports that. I think it's a very good idea. That's in the budget. There's also, in terms of the one-time money proposed for the schools, technology upgrades at the elementary and high schools that are needed for better internet access. There's $175,000 for the upgrade of a middle school curriculum. We really, in addition to the middle school project that you, Mr. Chair, and others are working on, we want to upgrade middle school education in general. So this is a good step. This is a significant step in that direction. And as I said, I did make a couple of changes in those one-time, the $2.9 million. First, I increased the amount that would go for broken furniture. I've gotten reports that there's a lot of broken furniture, from $60,000 to $250,000. And I did allocate the $200,000 for salaries and benefits for the additional ELL teachers. With respect to the city projects, we would fund the Library Plaza Park project, which is partially funded at this time, and I will touch on that a little more when I get to the questions that you forwarded me. And just also, we're continuing along, and you can look at the budget and see the smaller items that are there. But we are also, of course, going to be continuing on the paving plan of action. And we believe we can do 25 or 30 miles of streets and crack seal 30 or 40 miles of streets this year. That work has already started. And as you know, Mr. Chair, we are moving forward with the Elm Street Middle School, with the replacement of the Elm Street Middle School with a new site on Buck Meadow Road. And those projects are ongoing. So I think that gives you an overall picture of the budget. And now I thought, Mr. Chairman, if you will indulge me, I would take a couple of minutes to briefly answer the questions that you had forwarded me that may have come from either you or other members of the Board of Aldermen. The first question was if the budget is passed, the first question it asks about the projected 4.5% tax increase. That's projected based upon the budget that I proposed. The next question, what about the COVID-19 outbreak? Now, I think Justin is on the line and he can tell you about the details if you'd like about the Justin Cates, Emergency Management Director. He can tell you about the potential for reimbursement of a lot of these costs. But I can tell you that, and am I still on, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yep.
Okay, sorry. The camera's going a little strange. Or the screen. I can tell you that Director Cates and the others, people who've been working on this, and we've talked about this before, but the public health nurses and even everyone is doing a great job on this emergency response. We have allocated $150,000 to the needs of the city for the coronavirus outbreak. Ms. Kleiner will tell you that about $125,000 of that is expended already. And we are going to need to ask for more, probably $200,000 more, for a resolution that will be proposed for the next meeting of the Board of Aldermen, which is a week from tonight. The expenses that we're covering are the additional IT expenses, the PPE, personal protective equipment that we are getting for city employees, especially for the first responders, all of the cleaning supplies that we've been using and getting for City Hall and elsewhere, overtime, things like that to enable the city to protect people as much as we possibly can during the peak of this coronavirus crisis. In addition to that, so we need more money there. Now, the other thing that's going on is that the state has established the alternative care site, we call it. That's the designated name. The acronym is ACS. That will serve to house, to take care of an overflow capacity if that occurs at either of our hospitals. Of course, we are hoping and optimistic that that won't be necessary based on the case counts we have right now, but we don't really know for sure. So there are certain expenses that need to be incurred in order to make sure that we are ready in case the hospitals need that alternative care site. Now, it is on the city to advance in the first instance the funds, some of the funds that are necessary to make that alternative care site ready and able to receive patients if that becomes necessary. Principally, those involve some PPE, the personal protective equipment, could involve some food. We've made the school department using its funds has made certain construction changes over there, built some temporary walls. They may be upgrading the electronics. But as Mr. Cates will explain, well, first of all, Governor Sununu has made it very clear that any city money that is expended on the alternative care site will be reimbursed 100% by FEMA and or the state. With respect to the other expenditures that we are making, the cleaning supplies, the PPE, personal protective equipment for the police officers, for the firefighters, and for others, that will be probably reimbursed at only a 75% rate, but any reasonable expenses we can justify. But again, Director Cates can fill you in on the details, should be reimbursed at 75%. We can get into more detail, but let me go on with the questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
what, if any, costs can be deferred out of the 2021 budget? Well, I mean, we could cut. There are places, you could reduce the school department's budget further. I'm not recommending that, but you could. Again, we are increasing the level of service, but the school department we're increasing the number of employees and the quality of the education, the excellent education we already provide. But so you could reduce them. And again, I'm not recommending this. You could reduce them to their current workforce. But those are the kind of things you'd have to, those are the things you'd have to really do. We've talked about the one-time expenditures and how we could use those for non-recurring expenses to cover things that we would probably be doing in the future or that we would need to do in the future, and that are one-time expenses, so that we needed to do now or in the future that are one-time expenses, so that we don't put that into operating budgets that would create a situation where we wouldn't be able to sustain it in years to come because that money wouldn't be replaced. Question number 3 basically asks what we've done in the short term to curb the medical expenses. Well, I think you've heard in detail a week ago everything that's being done there. I think Ms. Kleiner and the consultants, Mr. Budrow, and everyone who's been involved in designing these plan design changes and coming up with the plan design changes has developed a very strong strategy to, if implemented across the entire workforce, would significantly reduce healthcare expenses, would certainly limit increases, and potentially even reduce the overall cost. But of course, that needs to be done over years because that needs to be folded into various, many collective bargaining agreements.
Lost your voice again.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back now.
Paper keeps touching something. I don't know what it is, but in any event, anyway, so they've come up. That's that plus the smart shopper plus the high deductible plan, encouraging people to move to that, being more aggressive about explaining to employees the advantages of the high deductible plan, which enable one to accumulate funds over a period of time that can be used later as like a retirement fund or in a similar way to an IRA. We've discussed that in detail, so I won't go into that again, having heard it just last week. Has there been a thought of a labor board to kind of provide guidance regarding salary and wage increases? We have such a thing. I mean, it has not been created by legislation, but as a management initiative, we have that. Ms. Kleiner, as Administrative Services Director, has led that and is meeting with the departments to inform them as to what we believe, how much the city we believe can afford in terms of contracts. We did invite an alderman to be on that committee, I believe, or to attend the meetings. I think to be on the committee. I don't know if anyone has been. I don't think a member of the board has attended, but that's certainly welcome. We can discuss that all in more detail as well. You asked about the exceptions to the 2.25% guidance. I think I've gone through that. That's the money in contingency for the PD, help them with the communications and the dispatchers, which in the end is really the best thing to do because we'll get more officers on the street. We may actually save more than 135 in overtime, but at least part of that will be offset, and therefore is a very wise expenditure. The last question has to do with the $1 million library project. Now, I have included that, as the question suggests, in the one-time expenditures on the city side. Right, and the question was, well, what about some other use, deferred maintenance or something like that? I think, first of all, there are a number of reasons that in my opinion, this is an important project and one we should do now. Before I mention a few of those reasons, I will say that I think as you get into your deliberations, you should talk with Director Sarah Marchant and Director Tim Cummings about this, because they're very familiar with the project and the advantages that it offers. But my take on it is this: first of all, we've already budgeted some money to the project. We've not only designed it, but we've allocated money to pay for part of the project. Number two, this one-time money isn't coming back. And if we don't do this project now, it could be one of these things that's designed and it just waits and waits and waits. It'd have to be bonded. We have the money now, and it should be undertaken for that reason. In addition, this is a blighted area. And the way this sort of project came to the fore is that the people at the library were complaining about the illegal and unsavory behavior that was occurring in that plaza, which over time has sort of degraded and been cut up for various things. Now we have the opioid crisis and other things. That's a different health issue we're dealing with. So the library said, look, we got to do something. So as in talking with the library board and with you, the Board of Aldermen, we decided we would go forward and design a reuse of that space, which right now, as I said, is kind of in a blighted state and also all cut up and very poorly used and designed. The idea was to activate that space so that we would have kids and families and everybody else using the space on a more frequent basis so that we can rescue what should be a premier park space for the city from its current condition. Next, we are upgrading that whole area. We have done a lot already, Mr. Chair. This is what you, the Board of Aldermen, and I have accomplished over the last few years with respect to the Court Street building. We have taken the bays of the fire station from dead storage, moved out all the junk that was in there. Now we have a brew pub in there. We are currently in the midst of providing safety sprinklers for the parts of the building, including the Streeter Theater, which are not sprinklered right now, including improving the safety. But that will also open up the smaller theater on the lower floor. There's money for the roof. We've allocated some, and now there's more to stop the roof from leaking. We've opened some little artist spaces in there. And as a result of everything that's going on, Peter Lally, who is the person, the spectacle management, is going to be the programmer for the Performing Arts Center. He has said when the theater is not being used by community groups, given all this upgrading that's going on, he would like to try to program it. Now, again, I want to make the first part of that when it is not needed by the community group. And we would coordinate that, certainly. And for that theater, we've all made it clear the community groups, Peacock Players, the Theater Guild, the actors, singers, whoever, they have first priority, but they don't use it all the time. So given the upgrades that are occurring, he'd be interested in trying to program at least some weekends in there, which would get more use for the building, actually bring in some more revenue. And also, Mr. Chairman, given that what's happened in the last couple of months, we really need to make, I think, a visible and firm commitment to the fact that despite the fact that downtown is right now, closed, and a lot of people downtown are hurting, a lot of businesses, restaurants, the workers are, the wait staff, the bartenders. We need to really jumpstart downtown once we get beyond this coronavirus crisis. And given that this project is there and can be done in the short term, and we have the money for it, it's the perfect time to do the project and turn that into a really, really nice area. I think it could be a morale boost for downtown. We're not giving up. We're not, shutting down because things haven't gone that well because of the coronavirus over the last few months. We are definitely committed to proceeding with all of our plans to make sure that downtown is revitalized. We're proceeding with our plans to create the strongest business climate we can possibly create, the strongest economy we can possibly create downtown. And all of this is working together. All of the things we're doing, the parades, the music, the riverfront project, this project, everything that we're trying to, obviously the Performing Arts Center, everything that we're trying to do downtown, everything that GAD is doing is designed to work together to build a stronger downtown economy. And for all those reasons, I believe we should provide the rest of the funding for this Library Park Plaza project, help the library with their problems, build a beautiful space, and just upgrade that whole area. So that's my pitch on that. I did go on a little bit, but I think it is an important project. So I'm willing to take any other questions you've got. Anyone, any comments, questions that anybody has, but I thought I would just cover those items at the beginning.
Just a little amplification on some of these things. When I was talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the city, not necessarily the expenses like PPE and all that that are going to be reimbursed, cleaning supplies, but on this year's budget, 2020, which typically we have monies left over at the end of the year to reduce the tax rate the following year. But I know there are a lot of things that are being done plus and minus on the 2020 budget. I know the police have foregone all training right now and cut their overtime budget as one thing. We have to be having savings from an energy standpoint. I would hope that we're not keeping all lights on in all our schools and maybe not even heating them or cooling them to what we normally do if there are no students in them. And there was fuel savings from other things as well. So I was just curious if we're taking a look, and I think I indicated to John that, do we have any idea where we're going to end up? I know we don't have the exact number, obviously, but because of this, do we have any idea that we have some savings from what's happening now that we can apply to other important things that we're going to have to expend money on now, again, because of the COVID-19 issue?
Well, I think that we can look in detail and give you an answer down the road. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a great deal of savings. Okay, maybe the school department has some electric expenses or heating, as you pointed out, but I mean, we've not furloughed anyone. So the payroll is the same. That's 80% of the budget. So really around the margins. Now but we may lose revenue because of it, in the sense that automobile purchases, registrations have been deferred. You don't have to register a new automobile right now. So that revenue's not coming in. Renewals are coming in. Now we've got several months here. It's now April, so we've got like 2.5 months to work on all this, Mr. Chairman. We can probably get more defined what the different effects of the corona situation may with the effects on the budget. But you're going to see some revenue down, planning, inspection, permit fees, things like that are likely to be down from what we projected. But we're very conservative about projecting revenue. So I'm still confident that we can apply that we'll have enough at the end of the year to apply 4.5%, 4.5 million to the tax rate, and provide tax relief in that regard. But we need that even to get to the 4.5% tax increase. We need to apply $4.5 million.
Okay. And just so you point out, I'm not I'm not against doing the library plaza per se, but I know that in the past years we've had issues with funding deferred or capital projects, especially the smaller ones, year to year. And deferred maintenance in the school department, I don't know where that sits right now, but we have underfunded that for the last few years, and that just hits us later on major expenses. Last year's budget, we had $100,000. We spent $90,000 on a single motor at Nashua High North. So it's just those are the types of things that I was thinking, looking at, because we do have to try and keep the next year budget as tight as possible because of the COVID-19 issue. People have lost income, lost jobs. We'll be getting back into the swing of things hopefully by the beginning of FY 2021, but we have no idea where we're going to be. So just a thought to look at that in light of the entire budget.
Well, deferred maintenance is certainly an issue, and the amount in the budget for operating budget, so to speak, is not very much. But there is, I believe, $400,000 in the one-time expenditures for John. CFO Griffin can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 400,000. I'm not looking at that page right now, but so we're trying to address that as well.
Okay, by the way, a more important budget I thought of when we started. Is the budget online in the city's website now? Because I've had a lot of people tell me it's not there or they can't find it. So it certainly doesn't have a button up front, I don't think. I haven't looked for it myself, but is there a button right up front of?
The website right now is coronavirus, but Ms. Kleiner can answer that question.
Ms. Kleiner?
Yes, it has been added to the website. If you go and you click on the budgets icon, it should take you to all of the budgets.
Okay. But the actual book is in there, right? Because I know some of the departments didn't even have a copy of the book. And just as an FYI, when I was going over things with some of the division heads, found a couple errors in the book, which I think that they have maybe talked to John Griffin about. So as we pick those up, we're going to point them out. But I don't want to get into specifics, but they didn't have a copy of the actual budget book.
We distributed.
Yes?
Yeah, John Griffin calling in. Yeah, the website, to be a little bit more specific, if you go on the front page on the banner, click on budgets and reports, you get to my financial services area and you just click on budgets from 2006 to the present. Scroll all the way down and you get the proposed budget.
Okay.
We tried to go mostly virtual with or online with these documents. So unlike the old days where we created maybe 200 of these books, they're distributed to the departments electronically. And to the extent they have any questions, they can certainly forward them to me.
Okay. All right. And let's see.
But one other thing, Alderman Dowd, I'd like to mention on behalf of the mayor. The mayor did, as part of the one-time revenue for the school department, he put $460,000 in the deferred maintenance line.
Okay. Sounds good. At one point, I saw a number of 0, which really freaked me out. Just want to
Now,
see if
I think the 250 for the furniture is kind of in that realm as well. That's a form of deferred maintenance. I mean, we need decent furniture for the kids. I mean, I've just heard that it's poor morale. You know, it just creates poor morale for the kids and teachers if everything's broken. So that would enable the school department to replace broken furniture all around the district, which
Yeah,
is again not the building, but still part of the infrastructure.
I can tell you on the new middle school, the furniture will be furniture that lasts. I know when we built the high schools, chairs we put in the cafeteria were less than stellar. Anyway, so I think that's all I had with the questions that I had sent you. Oh, one thing, you said that money from the state is come and gone and won't be ever repeated. From some of our state reps, is that true? That was a one-time shot?
Yes. Well, first of all, it was billed as 2 years and no guarantee beyond it. But think about I mean, I because of the ACS, the alternative care site at South, and I want to thank the school department for enabling that. I mean, Sean Smith and everyone has done a really good job on everything over there. But as a result of that, we've been talking with the governor about that and aid that might be coming to the state and everything. But at least out of state revenues, they're expecting revenues to be way down. So we're not getting money out of state revenues. Now, whether somehow we get money from the aid package that will be coming to the state from the federal government, that remains to be seen. The mayors are advocating that money come directly to the cities and towns, but we'll see. And it's also legally, I guess, unclear who really has authority to decide how that money will be directed. I mean, I believe our legislators would take the position that the legislature has to allocate the money, but at least some people have raised questions.
I'm going to turn it over a minute to Justin, but does anybody on the committee have a question for the mayor at this time?
Alderman Dowd? It's
Yes.
Rosanna. If I could just
Yeah.
make a comment, please.
Okay.
So I also was searching a bit for the budget book. Thankfully, the new city website has a very good search tool, so I was able to find it pretty quickly that way. But I would ask the mayor if it's possible to put it on his page. That was where I intuitively went to look for it, and it wasn't there.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'd
At least
appreciate
the
that.
button to get to it.
Well, let me direct it. But there's to Ms. Kleiner. You don't see any reason why we couldn't do a connection with the mayor's page, do you?
No, sir, we can certainly take care of that.
Yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Anyone else on the committee? Anyone else not on the committee? No? You're up, Justin. Give us, I know you've been busy as a one-armed paper hanger. If you can just give us an update on what you see as the emergency preparedness director.
But before
Sure.
Justin begins, let me just give him one more. I don't want to him to get like a big head or whatever, but he and everyone else, I mean, Justin's been doing a great job devoting a lot of time, obviously, to this. We are on this 7 days a week. We have a daily conference call, including weekends. He'll be in charge of getting the reimbursement, but the city has really come together in many different groups, and we've talked about this already. But healthcare, the whole healthcare community, the law, our first responders, Justin Cates and his people, Bobby Bagley and the public health nurses have all done a fantastic job. But Justin has kind of leading much of this effort. So I just want to thank him and say that I have great confidence that he'll get back every dollar that's available for reimbursement. Anyway, go ahead, Justin.
Perfect. Thank you for the acknowledgement. Definitely, we've worked with the team over the past few weeks to really bring everybody together and try and find every way that we can help the citizens and businesses of the city. From our perspective, the last few weeks have really been focused around, ensuring that we're able to continue those essential services. So that was really the first week or so that we expended some substantial funding towards the technology upgrades, the systems to enable a lot of the remote work that you're seeing today. And that shifted and started transitioning into what we would consider sort of emergency operations, being able to go out and work with the variety of city divisions as well as our external stakeholders on what needs to be done to deal with the actual crisis. And one of the big things that we've been really making a lot of progress on has been bringing in personal protective equipment as well as cleaning supplies for those essential services. So we've worked very closely with administrative services, and they fit into our incident command structure as the supply unit. They've done a really great job at procuring supplies, even in these very difficult circumstances where we're fighting against other municipalities, we're fighting against the state, we're fighting against the federal government to get these supplies. So we've done pretty well at being able to supply our first responders, and even today we had a discussion about how we might be able to take the same best practices that we're using to manage supplies and bring those into the city, how we might be able to help some of the local nonprofits who are doing client work or smaller healthcare organizations, because they are having challenges trying to procure these supplies. So we did spend a lot of time and funding on supply management, and we still continue to do that. But really the next phase that we're working on is the expenditures related to the alternate care site. And as the mayor had mentioned, the alternate care site was really promised by the governor to be a full 100% reimbursement. And how that's going to be reimbursed is still to be determined. There's many federal programs that have come out of this disaster, including the FEMA Public Assistance Program. There's funding from the U.S. Health and Human Services and CDC. There's the funding from the most recent stimulus package. There's funding from Department of Justice. And there's even some other funding sources that I've heard about that'll be coming for firefighters, temporary food, a number of other programs. So it's going to be quite a puzzle to try and align all of the expenses that we have to these different federal programs, and really to ensure that we're getting and leveraging the maximum amount of federal cost share so that it's the smallest amount of impact on the city. So the alternate care site is something that's unique to the city. The city doesn't run a surge healthcare facility, so it's a learning curve for all of us to identify what are the needs at that location. We're leaning heavily on the expertise of our healthcare partners at Southern New Hampshire Health System, as well as St. Joseph's Healthcare. So they're providing insight as to what needs to be purchased, and the city is then using some funding that all of you have allocated towards this specific initiative to start the build out of that facility. Some of the equipment has been identified as resources that were existing as part of the existing public health cache of equipment. So the trailers and things that you found over at Gilson Road, those all have been completely utilized to build out this facility. And what I'm sure we'll find after this incident is that there'll be substantial amounts of money to replenish all those supplies, make sure that we're prepared for a future circumstance like this. So one of the things that we've done is part of that process to track expenses and to ensure that we're doing all of our due diligence when it comes to managing a unique facility like this is we receive official resource requests from the alternate care site, which is being led by the Public Health Division. We work with administrative services, who then sources the best solution for that issue. So, as an example, one of the most recent ones were dollies to hold up the large oxygen tanks that are going to be set up over at the facility. So, administrative services will go out, look to identify the best solution for that, and then uniquely to this specific setup as part of the disaster, I work with the mayor to get approval to expend funds for the alternate care site to make sure that we have the money available and that we can move forward with the next step. And then after that, if we get approval, then we go back and we actually go through the procurement process. So far, with the alternate care site, we may have spent, at least on the city side, with some of the supplies that we procured, maybe $1,000, $1,500, not very much. There's been some expenses on the school district side with the build out of the temporary walls and that type of stuff. But for the most part, it's been pretty small amounts of funding at this point. However, we are starting to get these resource requests in for that site. And one of the recent ones that the alternate care site has recommended is close to $50,000. So as you can imagine, this is starting to become a very expensive proposition. So we're continuing to work through those resource requests and forecast what the expenses of a facility like this might be to operate. But be assured that I believe that the majority of the expenses that we're seeing for this overall disaster, beyond just the alternate care site, we'll be able to get reimbursed at 75% at a minimum. There's many other federal programs, as I had mentioned, on the firefighting side, as well as the law enforcement side, that I believe will end up getting us to 100% reimbursement. Transit also is getting 100% reimbursement for their activities. And then, as I mentioned, the governor's promised 100% reimbursement for the alternate care site operations. That money won't be here before the end of the fiscal year, so we do need to determine a sustainable method to be able to bring additional funding in for this local fiscal year. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have about the response so far or what we project as we move forward.
Justin, on the Gilson Road site, do we just store things there and just use them when an emergency happens? Or do we do like a first in, first out type of stocking so that when the fire department, police department need masks, for instance, they get them from there, then we replace them in the stockpile? That's one question. The other question I would be is, given what just happened, are we anticipating that we would have to make that stockpile even larger in case?
So, unfortunately, that stockpile was not really leveraged to its full extent by the healthcare entities within the city. So, public health uses some of those supplies. The fire department certainly uses some of those supplies. Police department, very small amounts during routine operations. But there really, at the time, wasn't a great inventory management system over there because the facility is really not built for that kind of an operation. One of the things that I would propose that we look at moving forward is that we have a process with the two hospitals within the city to actually manage that site. And they would actually use that as their delivery location for supplies. And then they would, as you had mentioned, take those supplies and utilize them day to day. So that way, when we have a crisis like this, there would be the ability for us to have really 2-year-old supplies rather than 10-year-old supplies.
Right, exactly.
That'll be one of the things that comes up in the continuous improvement process. We have already been, just in the last 3 weeks, maintaining a document of all the recommendations that we'll have, ranging from looking at our IT infrastructure and how we might be able to leverage some newer technologies to be able to enable this type of remote work to be able to happen much more quickly than we experienced for this crisis, all the way through the approach that we use for inventory management for personal protective equipment and all those types of things.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other question you had was about making that larger. I don't know at this point. I can tell you that nobody, not just this city, but across the country, nobody had enough supplies for what we are dealing with right now. I just it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. A lot of people are saying that this might be very similar to what we saw after 9/11, where there were substantial amounts of Homeland Security funding to help build capabilities. The country didn't do a very good job after 9/11 at building capabilities. We built a lot of things that ultimately we couldn't sustain, and a lot of that stuff went in the trash. So one of the things that I think we need to, as a country, do after this is really identify what things we can use that we can use every day to help ensure that our first responders, our public health officials are able to do those activities that are necessary for their organizations, rather than just having stuff sit in a warehouse. So that'll be something that it's going to be much higher than all of our pay grades. It's something that we need as a country to really try and promote so that we don't see massive amounts of investment made after this crisis that result in really not any better ability for us to respond.
Now, the military has been using first in, first out type of inventory management for years to make sure that stuff doesn't rot on the shelf. And I think that's very important. I think one of the key things is going to be, remember, I had mentioned earlier about keeping track of what works and what doesn't work as a plan going forward. So how much we need in there could be one, and how it operates would also be in there. Does anybody have any questions from just in case? Laurie?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you, Justin, for all the hard work. I know you're putting in 25 hours a day. I'm not sure how you do it, but thank you for everything you're doing for the city.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Next.
Could I add something, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, by the way, I was going to say, your budget seems to be pretty tight, so I don't think we have a concern with your office, but if you have something else, go ahead.
Well, there are unseen parts of the city's response that are also very important. So, you know, Justin and Bobby, Mr. Cates and Ms. Bagley are handling the very visible stuff, public health, emergency management. But also inside City Hall, all of the work that's been done, largely by Ms. Kleiner, to enable all of the remote working, these meetings, the people working remotely, the cleaning supplies, the ordering. There's just a lot of behind the scenes work that has had to be done, and things are running as smoothly as they can just because of all that she's done. I want to make sure that even though that's not so visible, that people understand it. Am I still on?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry. No, and also Cheryl Lindner has been helping with all the communication as far as trying to get out the message that, and among other things, trying to get out the message that we need to encourage the social distancing and trying to make sure that kids aren't on the playgrounds and trying to keep everybody safe. So there are various task forces that have been organized. One of those is communications. Ms. Lindner is in charge of that one. Ms. Kleiner is in charge of the kind of the continuity one. We've got Sarah Marchant in charge of the having to do with the support for the nonprofits, trying to put out all the meals, everything the volunteers are doing. And in addition, there are others like economic recovery. Tim Cummings is on that one. So many people have been working really hard on this. And, you should be very happy with the employees that we have, and you know, I feel very proud to be part of the effort.
Yep, I would second that. Laurie?
Thank you. Mayor, I didn't mean to miss anyone. I honestly feel like everybody that's doing work right now, it's not all Justin, but Justin was before us, and Director Kleiner, thank you, and Cheryl and everybody. It's really taken that that much of an effort from all of you, so I didn't want to slight anybody. Thank you to all of you.
I would also say the IT department has stepped up with these 8,697 online meetings that they have to be watching for every day.
Definitely.
So next is civic and community activities. Who's going to take that item? Oh, you're on mute, Mayor.
I might sign off because Cheryl Linder is going to handle the mayor's budget and the rest of it.
Okay.
Anyway, anytime you need anything, let me know. I can come back to the meeting anytime.
Okay. Cheryl, you're up.
Good evening. It's nice to see all of you. It's hard to work remotely and not see all your faces as much as I'm used to. So it's nice to see you virtually. I hope you're all doing well. Our budget at the mayor's office is pretty simple, pretty tight within the guidelines. Other than our wage line, which is just keeping in line with the steps. Everything else is level funded. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them or get you the answers for them. But other than that, we're pretty much level funded.
The actual mayor's office, as far as the civic and community activities, that's where we give all our money to the different charities. I imagine they're all hurting. I know that we have been looking into GAD and the chamber because their funding sources have completely dried up, and they would be critical to us getting back on our feet. So that current 2020 year in that area, I think we need to shuffle the things around pretty closely there. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I would agree. As the mayor said, one of our task force assignments through Sarah Marchant has been to work with the nonprofits and try to help to fill the needs of those in our community that rely on their services and receive their benefits. And part of the process going forward is going to be helping those nonprofits to try to recover and get back to where they were pre-COVID-19. There are many programs out there through the federal government that have come down, and I'm sure that task force will be working with them going forward as well.
Yeah. Any questions on that from any of the budget committee? Alderman O'Brien.
Yes. On other services, 55, and looking at the dues for the National Regional Planning, and it seems to be not funded in 2021. That's item number 55221.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes, John?
John Griffin here. Alderman O'Brien beat me to the punch. I wanted to explain the two items.
Okay.
The first one, we felt it was more appropriate to put the regional solid waste dues in the solid waste budget, so that's where you're going to see that charge. And the regional planning, we felt it was appropriate to put it in the planning and zoning budget, so you'll see those dues in that budget. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one of the tricks of following the little ball into the shells. When things get moved around in the budget, like I'm sure the police department told you about the thing that we found, when things get slid around, it's very difficult to look at the budget and say, whoa, that went up or that went down, and you have no idea why. That's what I'm trying to do with the division heads right now, because that even caught them off guard, the police department. But so I don't know if there's any kind of composite list of the things that move like that, or if we're just going to have to catch it department by department.
Yeah, the good news, Alderman Dowd, is that I've been here this is probably my 10th budget, and the changes are not, there's not many changes from year to year, but certainly we'll try to point these out like this particular one going forward.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none. All right, Board of Aldermen. Donna, would you go?
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Graham. I'm the legislative manager of the Board of Aldermen, and I'm new to this position. And I have been here 7 months next week. Our budget has decreased due to a change of employees, but we have increased the merit positions for salary and a $200 increase in our office supplies. And that's about it. We've stayed within the mayor's guidelines, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does the president have any
I have
questions?
nothing else to add, and I just want to thank Donna for being available to present this tonight.
Yeah, I would have typically left it off, except that the budget committees from the Board of Aldermen, because we basically are level funded year to year and even go down sometimes. Things have shifted both in our group and in the down in the city clerk's office because of all the shifting, but we'll get into that. So does anybody have any questions from the budget committee on the Board of Aldermen budget? No? Anyone else outside the committee? No? All right. Legal department. Mr. Bolton. Attorney Bolton.
Yes, sir. The primary increases are in the salary and benefit areas that I have no control over in any event. Otherwise, in the other services, supplies and material, there's an overall increase of approximately $1,900 based upon the previous year and a half experience of things just gradually creep up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that at some point, and it's probably going to have to be in the future, and because of everything that's going on, but I know that we had talked at different times about adding another attorney in that office because of the workload. But I can say that you and your staff do an amazing job and have done extremely well in court for us. So I don't know if anybody's going to have any questions, particularly about your budget. And I look at it as like nothing in there that looks other than normal. Anybody else on the budget committee have any questions for legal?
I have a question.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I know that the city employs outside counsel for various matters. I read about how we're having lawsuits where we're represented by outside counsel and the settlements of those cases. I don't see anything. Where are those expenses? Where do those expenses show up?
That would be in the risk management department.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they'd usually be some type of action taken against the city. And I think Attorney Bolton, we hire like expertise in certain areas when that happens, or maybe just additional counsel because everybody's busy.
Sometimes it's motivated by our umbrella carrier who desires that we hire certain attorneys with what they consider appropriate levels of experience in a particular area.
Okay. Anything else, Alderman Jettie? You're on mute. You were on mute. Oh.
I'm sorry, I said I will look at the risk management portion, which I guess is coming up soon, and
Yeah.
I'll ask questions then. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for legal committee members or other people? Nope. All right, thank you, Attorney Bolton.
If it's okay, I'll ask to be excused for the remainder.
Certainly.
Thank you.
City Clerk's Office, Ms. Lovering.
Good evening. So my office is also coming in basically level funded. You will see that there is a reduction in the bottom line, and that is due to a deduction in fringe benefits with the shift that was just mentioned with my position from the Board of Aldermen down to the city clerks. There's two small increases, one $600 in the memberships to cover fees for myself and the deputy city clerk, and $1,300 in training and certification, and that's for enrollment in state courses so that I and the deputy city clerk can become certified city clerks for the state of New Hampshire. Besides that, we are level funded as well.
Are we still looking for a deputy or?
No, the department coordinator, Nicole Reyes, recently assumed that responsibility and role probably about 3 weeks ago.
Okay, and you have to replace her?
Yes, that department coordinator position is currently vacant. I am reviewing that PDF and looking at actually all the PDFs to do a thorough review and then hope to get that posted soon.
Okay, by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, the very next meeting we have is going to be talking about all the different divisions and departments' revenues. And that will be with John Griffin and David Fredette. That will be the discussion we have relative to revenues. So anything else that anyone has relative to the city clerk's office? Any questions? Anyone? No? All right.
I thank you for your time.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we get into administrative services. So, Mrs. Kleiner, you got a few things to discuss.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Would you like to take it department by department, Alderman Dow?
Sure. Yes.
So first, we would begin with the Administrative Services Office itself, which is level funded except for salaries. There are 2.5 unaffiliated positions. One, the half position is the grant writer that was added last January, and that is split between my office and Dr. Mosley's office under the schools.
So are we closely coordinating to make sure that both halves are funded, just to be sure?
Yes,
Okay.
and Dr. Mosley and I work very closely together. Her name is Pam Dees, and she has been very successful with securing grants past her salary.
Yeah, I know that the grant writer in the school department has been responsible over the years for bringing in a vast amount of money, more than their salaries have been. So,
Yes.
okay. Any questions on that from anyone on the budget committee? Yes, Alderman Ryan.
Yes, I do. Ms. Kleiner, how many grant writers does the school department have, though? I didn't know you were sharing in that position.
We are sharing. So at the city had no grant writers. Most of our divisions were proficient in grants and grants. Mayor Don last year, and it worked out it would be half between the city and half between the schools. And to my knowledge, the schools does not have another grant writer on staff, although they do have various administrators who, like our division directors, are pretty proficient in writing grants.
You know, there are various people in the school department that write for grants that usually smaller ones, the larger ones would be the grant writer. Any other questions on that particular aspect? Nope. All right.
Okay. Arlington Street Community Center, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the Arlington Street Community Center, which is near and dear to my heart, opened in 2017, and as some of you might remember, we didn't have a director until 2018. Director Karen has done amazing overnight programs. You see the only change to that budget is a line item for $3,000 for office supplies. We have been operating the center through an escrow from when we originally opened. The Board of Aldermen gave the Arlington Street Community Center $30,000, which we purchased all of the computer labs inside of the center. We had a remaining amount of money from that escrow, and we've been working it down now in its second year. We fully expect that escrow will be zero by year end, which is why we added the $3,000 into the budget for supplies. I just want to note that the Arlington Street Community Center also has a trust fund, and donations are made to that trust fund. That Director Karen has worked very hard in securing grants and donations. That fund has a current balance of $9,747. And if you remember, she also a grant donation, from Agnes to build the basketball court earlier outside of the center.
Is the center open currently, or is it shut down until schools open at some point?
The center generally follows the same shutdown procedure as the schools, even when it's inclement weather. So the center has been shut down since schools were closed.
Are we recognizing any savings?
The only real savings that we will recognize is the cost of utilities.
Okay. Any questions about the Arlington Center from anyone on the budget committee? Anyone else?
Yes. Yeah.
Who's Ben?
This is Ben Clemens.
Okay, go ahead.
It's more of a comment. I just want to say that this type of thing, I think that we're going to have a slow economic recovery from this, despite what people are saying. And this is the kind of thing that we need to make sure that we keep in our budget. It's very easy for the community or for some people in the community to say, that this is a nice have, but, not necessary. But I would actually disagree with that 100%, especially in times when the economy is doing poorly. These are the kind of things that we need in our community, and we need them more so than when times are good. So, as we go through the budget, I'm sure that there are going to be things that we want to look at to reduce the budget. At least I have some things in mind, because I think that a 4% increase is too much. But this would not be one of them. And programs like this, I would rather keep in the budget. So I just wanted to make that comment.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Human resources.
Human Resources is led by Director Boudreau. There is an increase in wages per the unaffiliated plan. And there's also a corresponding increase to fringe benefits. Other than that, there's a small decrease to their services because we've brought shredding in-house. There's very little change to the actual human resources budget.
Yeah, the only question I had looking at the numbers in the book, Ms. Kleiner, is that to date, we haven't, according to the book anyway, when the 13120, nothing had been spent for mileage reimbursements or conference and seminars. Has there been anything since then expended in those areas, or is that a savings this year? Because I don't think any conferences and seminars are going on anytime soon.
You're correct, Alderman Dowd. That those would have been conferences and seminars that you normally would have seen this time of year, so that certainly may be excess at the end.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? HR? No? Okay. Employee benefits.
So the one that everybody loves. So you're going to see an increase down on 59,500 claims administration of approximately $325,000. So we have various fees that are charged to the city for claims administration, and most of them are on a pure per employee per month basis. The Anthem cost per employee per month is increasing 1.5%. And that, with some other small changes, is the result.
You breaking up.
That change of 1.5% is the ultimate claims administration increase that you will see. We also have been informed by WBS that we will have a 4.5% increase in dental. Most of that is our dental claims that have risen. So you'll see that represented in the dental claim line. Other than that, it's what you have heard, an 8.6% increase. I'll just note here that when you look at salaries, that's 15% of the HR director, Director Boudreau, and 3 benefit employees that run the department. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, Alderman Dowd, it's Ben Clemens again.
Alderman Clemens.
Thank you. In regards to the dental claims, because of the crisis right now, even my dentist is closed. And so obviously I would imagine most of them are. Do we see the increase because of that? Like, in other words, anything that would have been done this year is going to be put off to next? Or was it more cost related?
Very good question. So most of our projections when it comes to healthcare or dental, these projections are costs through the end of February. What we are seeing, and you're right, Alderman Clemens, is many people's visits to their dentists and their doctors and elective procedures that they may have had scheduled have been canceled because of the current COVID-19 situation. So we've actually seen right now a decrease in claims come through. What we don't know is what that will do to the bottom line come the end of the fiscal year, or what that will do to our claims in fiscal 21 when the situation is over and people need to go to the doctors and have all those elective things done again. What we did feel was the right method to take was to take WBS's projections on potential increases and put those into the budget. But bear in mind, those were through the end of February, before the crisis began.
Do we have anything like a special revenue account that if we had a savings this year, we could put that money into and offset next year's expenses?
Good question, Alderman Dowd. The money would stay in the benefits insurance fund. So any savings that we had would remain in the fund.
That would be a nice bit of note as we go along.
I will
Any-
note.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead, Mrs. Kleiner. You wanted to finish up?
So I'll note that we have claims budgeted, health claims budgeted at $42 million. Currently, I just checked before we started tonight, and we have $30.4 million in claims so far. The fund balance is sitting at $10.7 million, which is we're happy to see. We haven't been up that high in a long time.
Okay. Alderman Clements?
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, Alderman Clements, go ahead.
Thank you. So I imagine that you're going to sit down with the, our insurance analysts because what I'm wondering is, I guess what I would like to know, and I don't expect you to have the answer tonight, but what I would like them to forecast for us is any elective surgeries and things of that nature that might have been put off because of this, and then going forward into next year. I'm wondering if, at some point, right, there's a capacity issue. So there's only so many of those types of surgeries and that kind of thing that can actually get done. And there's so many, as far as people taking time off and things like that in the city. So I'm wondering if we might actually see a savings next year as well, because of the medical community's ability to service all of those. Because if everybody's putting everything off this year, and you got to imagine that there's a group of people that wanted to do it next year, right? So I'm just wondering if we're going to see overall some savings there because of that. So I'd be interested to see if there's a projection on that.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, good.
I think it's going to be very difficult for WBS to actually make a projection on that, only because they wouldn't know what procedures some scheduled that didn't happen. Although I agree with you, Alderman Clemens, I do think you're going to have a capacity issue. There's a couple things that we have done that the mayor authorized. One that has already been authorized and one that we are investigating. Number one, the member cost share for the initial visit to the provider and testing for COVID-19 was waived for our city employees. So if they go into a provider and are being seen and tested for COVID-19, the city is picking up that copay. The other thing that Anthem has just proposed to their insurance groups is to waive the treatment for COVID-19. The city has not signed on to that. It's being discussed. We're looking at what Manchester's doing, what other fully insured plans are doing. There is a cap on that, so you would only pick up what the employee would have paid, which is basically their deductibles. So it's not like there's a really large liability there. And remember, anything after that, the city would have paid anyways. And then we have our stop loss for very large claims. But we haven't signed on to that. We're in discussion with Anthem and WBS on that. The other challenge that we have right now is with working remotely, we have to go to a virtual open enrollment process. And we've never done that strictly virtually. So we're talking with WBS, our insurance consultant, the benefits team about how we are going to do that, because one of the savings that we're trying to educate our employees on is switching to the high deductible plan. Where we were hoping that a number of employees would take that switch. And in order to do so, they would have to fill out all new paperwork, which now will have to be done virtually through what we believe we will be using a tool called Navigate, which is commonly used by our insurance broker. But certainly what we can do, Alderman Clements, in answer to your question, is watch these costs as they progress and report back to the board.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And you know, I understand where you're coming from, and I completely, it's all up in the air, and I get that. What I'm hoping for, and I'm sure you are too, as is everybody, is that at some point, whether it be the end of this year, which is probably not going to be likely, but maybe when we're doing this budget process next year, we have some kind of savings here, and we can get the costs down, you know, and hopefully some of these costs are reimbursed by the feds for the cost of, you know, covering for the COVID-19 and things like that. So, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, we can make out from an unfortunate situation. So that's just where I'm coming from on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think going forward, you know, even though we're hopefully going to have you on the downward slide towards the summer on this, it's not going to go away anytime soon until there's a vaccine. So people might be hesitant to do routine things, their doctor, until this is all cleared up even more. But I also don't know when they'll have the vaccine, and I don't know how much the vaccine will cost and who's going to cover it, but I can bet you that everybody will line up to get it. So that's something to think about too. Any other questions for employee benefits? All right, information technology.
So Alderman Dowd, if the board will indulge me for a moment, next month will be a year that I have been Director of Administrative Services, and I have to say that working with Mr. Cottingnone, Director Boudreau, Jen DeShays, Mr. Kukin, has been a pleasure. We have very, very talented people, and it's an absolute pleasure to work with them. Everything that Dr. Cottingnone and Nick Miservich and their whole team has done to get the city working remotely has been just a big task, and I cannot thank them enough. They continue to operate this city and all the technology in this city on an amazing budget. It's incredibly tight, and there's so much more we could do. We've had upgrades to programs. So we had the upgrade in assessing. We had a whole new software, permitting and licensing software this year in community development, which will be rolled out to the city clerk's office and to environmental health. They're working on eliminating the admin system, which is antiquated at best, and it's just amazing what they can get done building the new website. What they can get done on a very small budget, looking at a city of this size, is commendable. They had a software maintenance line that has a decrease. It went down because some maintenance plans are on a 3-year and some are on a 5-year. And we're just on the year that they're not due. So that decreased. They did have an additional hardware added for some servers and storage. That's on 54414. I'm sorry if I'm going too quick. They had an increase in computer software, and that's because they needed to purchase some additional software to support replace non-supported version. Again, they had some very small decrease in transcription. They had a rise in electricity and heating. Really, they had addition in other contracted services, and this is a to part-time videographers. But again, very little change in their budget, and it's amazing what they do with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've been through the budget on every single line item, and I don't see anywhere where they're even close to being overspent or amazing what they do with what they do have. And the only question I had was, we'd given them, the city, some money to develop backup servers. Is that in this budget, or is that kept separate?
So that was moved into the fiscal 20 budget. And Director Carnington, Nick Meisert are working on procuring those services and get them up and running at National High School South, which is also the site of the ACS we were discussing earlier. So that was in fiscal 20.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure there was no carryover into the 21 budget that we had at all. But and do we know when that's going to be online, or?
I will find out for you. I know they were working on it before they got switched over to making the city run. So I'm not sure if they finished the project, but I can certainly get back to you, sir.
All right, appreciate it. Any other questions? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm looking at the software licensing, and as we get more involved with this Corona-19 and holding these virtual meetings, is that enough? Are we going to be covered with the licensing? Do we need to purchase future programs for any other divisions that are coming under the IT wing? And do we have the money for the licensing for that?
Excellent question. So, as you know, in order to satisfy and have the city start working remotely, a large part of that loss prevention money was used for additional licenses. So we've added 108 Citrix licenses. And so a good chunk of this money that I referenced in the memo earlier today, approximately 28,000 was from the loss prevention account, was for technology.
just to sort of carry that, I know a certain large company here in Nashua is looking at if somebody's become more productive by working at home, they may stay that way even after this is over. Anyway, so all set, Alderman O'Brien? Anyone else for question of IT? Again, I just think they've done a great job and setting up these meetings and being in City Hall nights to get all of these busy meetings set up. They do a great job. Okay, risk.
Risk. So many of you know Jen DeShays. What you may not know is the person that's actually in City Hall right now, who's keeping the building and everything going, is Jen DeShays and Ross Dugas in the risk department. They are handling all the logistics for the supply unit. So as we order and procure things, and they are actually taking it all in and handling the inventory of it and getting it to the divisions and the first responders. One of the things that they have worked on also is really cleaning City Hall from top to bottom, stripping floors, re-waxing floors, painting of areas while we're not there. They've done an incredible job. So the custodians and building maintenance have continued to work. We're going to have a new City Hall when we all go back, which we hope is soon. Risk had. They anticipated some interest income to increase about $20,000. This is just off prior history and an increase in the interest rate. What you will see is an increase in the transfer from the wastewater fund. So we have a transfer from wastewater that comes into risk. It is a chargeback that relates to claims and the cost of the insurance for the wastewater treatment. For a number of years, we haven't increased that transfer, but it got to a point where this is a conservative number, and we felt the need to increase it. They have a slight increase in wages. They did have a loss of one position. So they had an admin in risk that actually is the admin that came over to administrative services office. They have some increase in insurance. It's general liability increase of approximately $70,000. This is in anticipation of market history and large losses in both fiscal 18 and 19. There's some consideration of additional exposure moving forward. They have a slight increase on property due to large loss history and consideration of increased coverage. You'll see in the claims there was an increase in property expense due to a large loss history and again trended expenses. I believe it was Alderman Jetty who asked a question earlier about outside legal fees. So in the loss prevention line, we had budgeted $25,000. We expended $46,000. And this is before the COVID-19, because now we have COVID-19 funds in there that we're tracking separately. That was legal advice expenses were allocated to that line item. And I'll stop there.
Alderman Jetty, did you have something?
Yes, I did. So where is that? You mentioned there was a line item that represented legal fees. What number is that?
Yes, sir. So we charge those legal fees to the loss prevention line.
So does that have a number?
It does. If I can get myself. Let me look at it.
Loss prevention is 68,360.
Yeah. There you go. Got it?
On this page of the
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
page 98.
So I understand that the city is, for medical claims, we're self-insured. But we're not self-insured for other types of claims like workers' compensation, general liability, property damage. Is that correct?
Well, we are insured, and we do have a deductible. So it's not fully self-insured, no.
Follow up?
Okay, and so Attorney Bolton talked about an umbrella policy. Where is that on here?
So you're looking at the various insurance programs and claims in section 59.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's the general liability policies that you see there listed.
Yes. That would include the umbrella that he talked about?
Correct. So anything up to $400,000, the city is the city's deductible.
Okay, so if someone makes a claim against the city, we pay the first 400,000, and then the insurance kicks in after that? Is that
Correct.
And does that $400,000 deductible, that includes defense costs, attorney defense costs?
Well, I want to be careful. That depends on what type of, so you have some insurance, some attorney fees that were in that loss prevention that were not, depends on what the claim is. So the attorney fees that are included in were for employee and other suits. It depends on what the type of suit is.
Okay, I'm sorry, you broke up, at least for me there. Could you just repeat what you said?
Not all attorney fees or outside counsel would be in that loss prevention line. There are some attorney fees and some things that would be covered by the insurance company when they assign legal counsel. We have
Okay.
over 12 different general liability policies.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And if it would help, Alderman Dowd, it may help to have Jen DeShays, for the aldermen that have joined recently, come at some point and give a whole breakdown on just insurance, because you could cover a good full meeting in just the different type of insurance policies we have and how the insurance work. Each claim is different. But Jen DeShays would be excellent to come and walk everyone through that.
I was just curious, how much control do we have over the expenditure in each one of those line items, though? Sort of self-dictate?
Jen and her two claims adjusters work day in and day out. They have incredible control on those light items and on each and every policy that we have. I receive a report and they walk me through it. I will tell you that they have incredible detail down to their claims, both general liability, property, and workman's comp. It's a very well-oiled machine.
So if anybody on the budget committee to have her come into a future meeting, just send me an email and we'll see if we can use that. Anyone
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question on risk? Two things. One, since City Hall is not closed too often for any period of time, and now it is, the tile in the elevator, the main elevator, hasn't been replaced since Alderman O'Brien was playing in JVs. So maybe we could look into that. It's not a huge job, but it certainly detracts from anybody coming into City Hall to see that broken tile and the tile that was put in with the original elevator underneath it. But anyway, the other thing is, if you could have Jen give me a call. We have an issue with Pennachuck Middle School. You remember that classroom that got flooded?
Yes.
I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but we have an issue with the dry system in the attic. So I need to talk to her.
Will do, Amanda.
All right, so we're in the city buildings. Oh, fits right into the tile.
So before I move on to city buildings, just to give you a little background. So every year at budget time, we put out utility guidelines, which include, electricity, water. It includes telephone and postage, and this is a guidance for all city divisions to use in the preparation of their budget. And the reason that this ties in nicely with city buildings is that's most of the cost in city buildings is utility costs for our various buildings. So I wanted to note we're using a 2% increase in electricity. These contracts expire in November, December of 2020, and then they'll be negotiated. Many of you may have met Doria Brown, the new energy manager, with us on this guidance. Pennachuck on the water, we were given an increase of an additional 11.91 to base rates, was requested by Pennachuck. Natural gas, we're using 2%. There's nothing in the postage. Stamp costs will remain 55 cents. Our metered mail is 50 cents. When it gets to boxes and things, they flat rate boxes, they expect those to raise 5%. And petroleum fuels, there was no mandated fees used for that. Heating oil, no increase. The budgeted number is 3.07 cents per gallon. And for diesel, the budget number is 3.9 cents a gallon, no increase there. Unleaded gasoline, we had a 5% increase. The current actual cost is locked at 2.095 cents to June of 20, and then it will need to be sent out for an RFP. We'll advise the actual cost for July 20 through 21 when the new contract is in place. So I wanted to update everyone on that guidance because this plays right into building maintenance. you're going to see some increase in building maintenance expenses for this year. One of the reason is we have 2 additional facilities that have been added to the city buildings budget. 201 Main Street and 141 Burke Street. As you may remember, 141 Burke Street was in the DPW budget prior to this. It's come over to city buildings now. And 201 Main Street actually had rental income when they had tenants in there, and it had a special fund. That has been closed. There's no rental income. And so the utility costs, maintenance costs, and those things has come over to the city buildings department. There's a bottom line increase of approximately $93,000. If it wasn't for these 2 new facilities, the proposed budget would fall within the 2% target. There's very modest changes in other line items, most of them resulting from the purchasing and energy guidelines I just gave you.
Okay, especially for the new people and even for some of us that have been around, could somebody put out a list of all the buildings? Because it's not all city buildings. Which city buildings are they responsible for? And you don't need that right now, but I mean, you can just send it to us.
Certainly, if you prefer me to send it, I can, because you're right, it isn't. I can send it. We're responsible for Court Street, Mulberry, 201 Main, the Arlington Street, Gilson Road. We do the maintenance for the senior center, for City Hall, but I'll send out a list so that you have it. I can include the guidance that I read to you that we gave to the.
That would be great. Because not everybody's on the call tonight. So I just want to make sure that people knew it didn't include any of the schools. Or that budget would be great. So, yeah, school maintenance is a heck of a lot higher than that. What was the other thing I was just thinking? I guess I know what I was thinking. Now, all the departments I know use the standards that you just talked about to develop their budgets. But for instance, I asked the chief of police, I said, all right, you don't have to duct tape your windows anymore and shovel the snow off your desk as we replaced all your windows. And they're giving them a whole new HVAC system. I'd like to believe that the costs are going to go down, but I don't know if anybody's actually put a pencil to paper to try and figure that out.
I would have to believe that Police Chief Carignan has done that. So he and his team were very big. He had actual committee following this whole project. They were very devoted to it. And we spoke with them at length about how they would be tracking energy savings. So I have to believe that they are watching it close.
So the other thing is we've put 2 solar systems in that's supposed to be saving us money. How does that into the budget?
We have not seen any solar savings to date. That would all be handled by Doria Brown, the new energy manager. She would be tracking those.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd have an answer tonight, but we do have her scheduled, so we'll be talking to her, but just a heads up. All right, anything else on city buildings from anyone?
Yes, I have a question.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Jetty?
So I noticed that there's quite an increase in electricity and heating gas. And I think you said that part of the reason is that buildings that were not part of this portion of the budget have been brought over, and you mentioned Burke Street. I thought we sold Burke Street.
No, sir, we have not sold Burke Street as of yet.
Okay. And so we're heating that, we're paying for heating, gas, and electricity on that Brook Street property?
Minimal.
It's probably kept at a temperature so pipes don't freeze.
Okay. So how does that account for, I see that heating gas has gone from 29.4 to 53.3. That's like an 80%. I think that's an 80% increase.
So we do have a large increase due to 14 Court Street in that area as well. And part of it is the age of the system over at Court Street. One building that I failed to mention, and I should have, is we're also watching and in control of NIMCO as well. So I did fail to mention that. And we do supply limited utilities to the Crown Street building as well. But when you look at the increase to the electricity line, you're looking at mainly increases for 201 Main Street, increases for all the other city buildings per the guidance, and then the increase of Burke Street that was never included in this budget before.
Okay. You all set, Alderman
Okay.
Jettie?
Yep. Thank you.
Alderman Clements, did you have something?
Mr. Chairman, it's Ben Clemens.
Yes, go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. I noticed in the wages, they've gone down, and I was wondering if you could explain that.
They have had some changes with the building maintenance. So most of you know Jay Honeywell, who has been the manager of building maintenance for a long time. We had two other maintenance technicians that have left. We've had some new hires. So we've had some turnover. We had some turnover in custodians as well. So for a while, those positions remained open as we hired. And when we hired new people, of course, you see a shift in wages at that point as they come in at a lower level.
Okay, so but do we have the same amount of employees as the last budget?
At the time of the budget, and now I'm thinking I'm going to get back to you, Alderman Clements, because I think we had one position, custodian position, that may have changed. So before I speak, I'm going to get back to you if I may.
All right, so we'll take that as an action for response. Okay, Alderman Clements?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Nope. All right, so just while we're on city buildings, what percentage of our new chamber is complete? It looks pretty close, but I know chairs weren't there yet, only one. But how, when do we break the bottle on the bow?
Soon, Alderman Dowd, I promise. They are in there working on the technology. There's a couple more change orders that got approved today. Some moving of the drawers and the front two desks, the mayor and the legal counsel's desk, new table in the back. I mean, it's odds and ends. I promise it's soon.
It's all right. I don't see us going in there anytime real soon. Okay. The only other thing, and I mentioned this to Alderman Wilshire, is when I look at all the other cities and towns, they have the city seal right up front over somewhere around the chairman's, I think right over the top of the president's head on the wall would probably be the best, most visible place. But have we looked at getting the city seal in there?
We have not. I think it's a wonderful idea. We can certainly work with President Wilshire to find something that is tasteful that would be at the will of the board.
Okay, sounds good. All right, purchasing.
Purchasing. Purchasing is a very small department with very minor changes. So we had a new employee join us, Amy Gerard, and I think it's maybe been 3 months now. So we have some increase in dues and memberships for her to join the purchasing group of New Hampshire. Postage is based on the new rates that I spoke to you about for small packages. Office supplies is a decrease based on usage, and printing supplies is the same based on usage. We brought it down.
Okay. Any questions on purchasing? I looked at the list and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Pretty straightforward. Anyone have any questions or concerns? Nope. All right. Assessing.
Assessing. So, in the consulting services line, you're going to see a reduction. So in fiscal 2020, we had put an extra amount in consulting, knowing that we were working without a chief assessor. That was budgeted there in case we needed to rely on some expert services. Now the chief assessor position is budgeted, but what we did keep in there was $25,000. I'm glad we did. That's in case we need some technical services until the chief assessor position is filled.
Okay.
You'll see in communications data, there's an increase. That's a full year of tablet data use. We are having tablets. We purchased tablets for the new AP5 CAMA system, and we have to pay for the data on those tablets. See an increase in mileage reimbursement. That is because of an increase in inspections. And prior to a few weeks ago, we were doing really well. Of course, you know, interior inspections for both our internal assessors and for our contractor with the revaluation Vision have suspended. Some of our assessors are actually still going out and driving around and measuring new construction where there are no people present, and they can just get out and measure. They're doing that type of thing. But as soon as we are able, we will get right back to that inspections and use that mileage. You'll see an increase in employee training. That's for continuing education for assessors, and we do have a new employee on the administrative side. And she will need to go through several courses, which we've all gone through when you join the assessing office. There's an increase in office supplies, mostly due to the increase of paper for the right to know requests. There's an increase in subscriptions, and that's due to CoStar, which is a system that we have a subscription with for the use with commercial properties. And we split that subscription in half with economic development and Director Cummings. Line 871000, the equipment, we decreased that this year because the fiscal 2020 included those tablet purchases I spoke about earlier. And we're all set with that. And then we increased the furniture line for part of our office renovations, which has now been delayed due to the COVID-19 situation as well.
So you said you had budgeted money in the 2020 budget for a chief assessor, which we don't have. So there's a savings there on, for instance, the line item you was referencing on the furniture. Couldn't we take that money and buy it now and take it out of next year's budget?
For the furniture, it would be difficult. We actually need physical construction of walls to move before we can decide what furniture needs to be repurposed and what new furniture we will need. So we're looking at actually expanding the assessing office so that we can have a larger area to assist our residents, and in a more private area to assist our residents when we're talking about financial information that may be on assessing applications for elderly exemptions, for example.
I know anything we don't spend would go into contingency, it would go into deferring next year's tax. But, you know, again, if there are things that we could do now with City Hall closed to make it easier, less expensive, and take it out of the budget this year, it's something to look at anyway.
I will, I'm happy to report, we've had a few applications come in for a chief assessor right before we start working remotely. So I'm keeping in touch, and I hope that when we resume operations, we can have interviews begin.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions on assessing? No? All right. GIS.
GIS. So there again, we had consulting services, and it was actually in an outside line outside of the departmental budget. It was a result of an escrow that Mayor Donchis had done last summer or fall. We're bringing that amount into the departmental because we realize it's a line item we're going to need moving forward. Right. We have a contract with CDM Smith, and they are providing those consulting services at least through June of 2020. And I would assume going forward after that, but that'll be determined later. As you know, we have one employee in GIS who is now working very closely with one GIS position in DPW. We have a GIS steering committee that is a mixture of administrative services, information technology, DPW, and then directors such as Director Cummings, Director Marchant, and we sit and make important decisions regarding the future of GIS as a group. And we've also brought in Esri, who is a consultant. They're the actual provider of the GIS system. They have come in and started to do an assessment with us on how we should move our GIS function forward. You'll see a decrease in the aerial imagery services line, 53500. That is a decrease because this flight is only every 3 years. So it was in last year's. I will note we had a bad foliage year. Last year, the pictures didn't come out as we wanted. Eagle View is the firm that does that flyover. And they were supposed to come back this spring and do a recheck. And Ms. Andruskevich has reached out to them today to see when that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
The employee training line that you see an increase on, that is not only for Ms. Andruskevich in GIS here, but also for the GIS position in DPW. They will be sharing that line item. And the furniture is part of the renovation that I just spoke about earlier in assessing.
Okay. Questions for GIS? Anyone? No, we lost our clerk. Where'd he go?
I'm here. I'm right here.
There he is. He's back. Okay, that wraps up our reviews for tonight. I'd entertain a motion to table R20-023.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to table R20-023 by roll call
Until our next budget meeting.
until our next scheduled budget meeting.
And yes, roll call.
May I call the roll, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Alderman at Large, Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman at Large, Michael O'Brien says yes. Alderman at Large, Laurie Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Alderman Jettie,
Jettie.
we're on mute.
I'll
You
skip
may not be
it.
there.
Alderman Jan Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman at Large, Ben Clemens, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Chairman Richard Dowd.
Yes.
And I'll recall Alderman Ernest Jettie. Alderman Ernest Jettie is not in attendance. I'll be 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay. Motion is tabled until our next meeting, which I believe is next Monday. And I believe that's when we will be discussing all of the revenues. So, new business ordinances,
There is none.
tabled in committee,
None.
general discussion. Anyone have anything? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman. I just want to say that our city groups are doing an amazing job with this COVID-19. I know that some of our first offenders, supporters have come down with this, and fortunately not obviously, but I have to applaud all of the groups that are doing a great job and keeping the city safe.
Could I say
Possible-
something?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I let everybody know that the information that's coming out to citizens is making a huge difference for people. And it's very much appreciated. The work they're doing is terrific, but letting people know that they're safe is really, really important. Thank you.
Oh, that's Jan.
That's Jan.
Yeah, all I see is a black screen. Okay. Non-public,
Chairman?
we don't need any.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
it's Alderman Jettie.
yes.
I couldn't respond because I couldn't find the right button to push. I'm sorry. I was still here. I could hear you. I would have voted yay had I been able to push the right button. Sorry.
Okay, we got one more vote coming up in a minute. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
Alderman
Chairman,
O'Brien,
thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
all right, call the roll.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yay. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
our Chairman Alderman Dowd,
Yes,
7
we're
yay.
adjourned at 9:29. Thank you, everyone. And we'll be sending out the meeting notice and the link for the next meeting. And we'll make sure it goes out to everyone on the board. All
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Great job. Good night, everybody.
Everybody
Good
stay
night.
safe. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.